COVID-19 has impacted every single one of our lives since March of 2020. We're going to talk to a guy today who has had to manage COVID-19 in a way that few of us have. You're listening to The Chuck Williams Show.
You speak, we listen. Conversations connecting people. This is The Chuck Williams Show.
Welcome back to another edition. We are quickly running out of 2021, and that's a good thing right now. Our guest is Scott Hill. Scott Hill is the CEO of Piedmont Columbus Regional, the largest hospital system in the city of Columbus with the Midtown campus and the Northside campus. And he's also the COO of the Piedmont Healthcare System, which is a statewide network of hospitals based in Atlanta that has 16 hospitals.
Yeah, 16 hospitals. Been kind of serving in that point role for the pandemic response, and really it's a lot of coordination, and same way with the folks here locally with my team. It's just trying to work to meet a need that I don't think we could have ever anticipated or really maybe even properly prepared for, but nonetheless we're here and we've been doing it for almost 2 years. So I would say locally and statewide, healthcare workers in general have a lot to be proud of. They
do. And Scott, no introductions, no platitudes. Let's just start talking, and that's how you want to be with Scott. Scott is that kind of guy who's going to cut right to the chase. And I've known you now for 9 years. You've just celebrated your 9th year here.
I did, yeah. Back at the beginning of November, 9-year anniversary. And really, the October 31st was my technical start date. So,
when was the first time you heard the words coronavirus or COVID-19?
Well, really, that's coming out of the gate. It was probably in like December of 2019, right? Like there was a thing going on in China, and everyone's like, oh, it's just, something happening overseas, nothing we need to be worried about. And then as we got into, January of 2020, it was like, well, there's a case in Seattle, and, is this something we need to be worried about? And you kind of work through the first couple months of the year, and it all of a sudden got really real, really fast.
That's the part about COVID that I think as we sit here, what are we now? Nearly 18, 19 months into it, 20 months into it. As we're into this, we don't realize how real it got as quickly as it got. What you just said really struck me.
Yeah, it just happened, right? And it was like all of a sudden a worldwide pandemic hit the United States, and it's like, what are we going to do? And that first wave was so much of learning literally day by day, minute by minute. And then as, 2020 progressed and we got into, the end of 2020 and through the second wave of COVID, which was worse than the first wave, and into 21, and we got into the third wave of COVID, which was worse. It just kept getting a little bit worse, honestly. And, we were able to apply lessons learned. And every response to every wave has been just a little bit different, but it happened fast. And, you blink and here we sit almost 2 full years later, right?
We're on the doorstep of a fifth wave. It's happening across parts of the country.
Yeah.
You're saying Columbus and Georgia.
I think that fifth wave, Chuck, is mixed with Delta too. So there are some areas of the country that never had a fourth surge, based on what I'm reading.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of no doubt that Omicron's here, right? I mean, the CDC just announced that I think 73% of new cases are Omicron, and we're still dealing with Delta too, and so I think that some of the areas that are really kind of getting punched in the nose right now are areas that we're dealing with a fourth surge, and now we got Omicron coming through, and there's a lot we don't know about the new variant and if it's going to drive hospitalizations or not. I think the reality is we do know that if you're vaccinated and boosted, you stand a really high chance of not having any severe illness at all, which is great. But we don't have great vaccination rates across the country either. And there's some folks that are willing to risk it. I think, unfortunately, that puts a strain on the healthcare industry as a whole, which is tough.
It is. you're talking about Omicron, and I mispronounced it. My Eufaula. That was the one letter in the Greek alphabet I couldn't pronounce. I'm ready for Omega. I'm ready to get to the very end of this.
Trust me, we all are.
How is Omicron different from the original version of the coronavirus?
Well, I mean, if you go all the way back, I mean, I think really the comparator is Delta, really, because that was so contagious and just moved through the United States in such a rapid fashion. They're saying Omicron is even more transmissible and contagious, infectious than Delta. But you know, there's still a lot that we're learning about it, and everybody's paying really close attention to South Africa and Britain right now, because that seems to be the two places that are having the most experience with Omicron, and trying to learn a lot from that. And both, I think, Moderna and Pfizer have come out and said we feel really good about our vaccine, and if you're vaccinated and boosted, that not hopefully, but, you know, studies show that you stand a pretty high chance of not having severe illness, which is good.
I saw a friend post that yesterday, said he felt pretty good about being on Team Moderna. I feel pretty good about being on Team Moderna.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just based on what you're seeing. You know, you're talking about watching South Africa. One of the things I'm watching is the professional sports franchises, because that was one of the kind of canaries in the coal mine in March of 2020 was, you know, I can still see that guy running out of the NBA locker room and shutting down an NBA basketball game, some doctor.
Yeah.
And I've been talking to Les Snead. Les Snead is the general manager of the Los Angeles Rams. He's from Eufaula. And the Rams have had a serious outbreak in the last 10 days. At one point, they had 35 of their 75 rostered taxi squad players that were positive, most of it Omicron. And he said the thing about it was incredibly contagious, but it was much milder.
Right.
Does that, I mean, are you watching the sports teams too? Because the NHL is shut down.
Well, I watch sports all the time, Chuck.
Yeah,
you know that.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
But yeah, it's interesting to watch, and that's where I think we're going to your point, see these lessons learned. It's mild, but they're all professional athletes, right? So let's talk. You talk about that for a second. I mean, how many comorbidities you think the athletes on the LA Rams have? There's probably some, right? Don't get me wrong, but
there's a few big guys.
No doubt. But I mean, you know, and I'm not trying to minimize anything at all. But you know, they're professional athletes. I think that where we on the healthcare side have to pay really close attention is how does Omicron affect someone who has 2 or 3 different comorbidities, is immunocompromised, and ultimately, you know, even vaccinated, right? For me, fairly healthy person, vaccinated and boosted, I kind of like what I'm hearing from Pfizer and Moderna. That's great, but, you know, for someone who may, you know, have a few health conditions, or, you know, has had cancer or something along those lines, you know, Omicron's, we don't know yet.
Those are the people that come through the doors of your ER and into your hospital, right?
Daily.
And
hourly, minutely.
You know, I was in your ER Thursday night with my mom for a little while, and I'll tell you this. I don't know how they do it. I mean, there were various people in various stages of pain. There was a 16-year-old gunshot victim that came in while I was there. It's like, how, I mean, I know your ER director is Jack Rogers, a guy who I know well. How do they do it? How do those guys do that on a daily basis? You know, and they've always dealt with the trauma, but we've got a high homicide rate in Columbus this year. We're approaching, 70? I mean, astronomical number. Most of those gunshot wounds are coming into your.
Well, I believe they all are. You know, as the trauma center, it's something that we do and are proud to do for the community. But I think at the end of the day, Chuck, when you're talking about anybody in healthcare, they're called to it. You know, I mean, and they're called to it. It's in their heart, and so, you know, they want to help people get better. And it is really difficult right now. Our staff has been through 4 waves of COVID at this point, and you know, it's tiring. And then I think you kind of pile that on top of, life, and the way, frankly, some of our, just the nation is right now from a standpoint of what's going on politically.
People are on edge.
People are absolutely on edge, and that is, there's a lack of patience. That I think our staff experiences. That you see it in the grocery store. We were having a roundtable the other day, a CEO roundtable with me and some of our senior leaders sit just with a group of staff and have lunch. And one of our staff members said, I bumped into somebody by accident at the grocery store the other day and was say, I'm so sorry. And they're like, what's wrong with you? Why'd you bump into me? And it's like, well, it was an accident, like, I'm sorry. And I think you just see this lack of patience and just people need to take a deep breath. It's hard. There's a lot of stress in the world. And the struggle on the healthcare side is people are already coming to you in their weakest moments. Nobody really runs to the hospital looking forward to it.
You don't go to the ER just to go to the ER. You go to the ER, there's a reason.
I mean, we have happy moments too. Don't get me wrong. We birth a lot of babies, but the vast majority of what we do is take care of people in their weakest moments. And I believe in my heart that we have to respect everything that they're going through, and we have to have put the patient at the center mentality. But our staff is really tired right now. But they've done such a great job. I mean, I can't say enough about how awesome everyone in the organization, how they've responded, how they've come together and just lifted each other up and recognized each in those tough moments. But it plays out. In a lot of different ways. There's a lot of stress, and so we're just trying to do our best to make sure they're taken care of right now.
You got 3,000 employees that work for you here in Columbus,
Yes.
roughly, ballpark figure. Y'all, Piedmont was the first system in the state of Georgia to mandate vaccines for its employees, first healthcare system.
We require vaccines.
Require. I like that word better. Requires better than mandate.
We require the flu shot.
We're
So, it's a requirement to work, and I think that as politicized as it's gotten, and it has, and I will, me, you've heard me say this before. Both sides of the aisle are using a public health crisis to their own advantage right now, and so
does that piss you off?
I think it concerns me. In a lot of ways, yeah, and I think I'm aggravated like everybody else. I think that there are a lot of people that see it and call BS on it and can see through it, and it's super frustrating. But at the end of the day, we know. I mean, both the former president and the current sitting president both have gotten the vaccine and have gotten the booster. That's a fact. They've openly said it. But somehow or another, it's still being used to everybody's own devices.
And as
it causes division.
As the politicians hit this ball across the net, I see the face of you and healthcare workers, first responders. I mean, there's a lot of people who are in that middle ground that are kind of getting pushed and pulled in the political tug of this, right?
Everyone is.
Yep.
I mean, our entire country is. And again, that's where, I think about if folks could just start to use a little bit of common sense and just better judgment and figure out ways to work together to the benefit of all involved. There was a time in our country where we didn't have a problem doing that. It seems to be more of a struggle now, and I do believe the vast majority of Americans want to see the best for everyone involved, and want to come together to do the right thing and to stop the spread of this disease and to fight the pandemic in a logical, reasonable way.
Those people that look for the middle ground are kind of dying. I mean, we're about to bury one this week, Senator Isaacson, who was a clear middle ground guy, even though he was a principled Republican. Let me ask you a question. This is probably the hardest question I'm going to ask you. You ever thought about running for office? You ever thought about being a politician?
No.
you're practical. You're talking about common sense. You're talking about things that the people you've got a hard right and a hard left, and they're going to be hard right and hard left. I want to believe there's at least 51% of people in the middle that are, lean one way or lean the other, but they're willing to compromise. Yeah. But we're hearing from the hard right and the hard left. You sound like you're in the middle.
Well, I am. I mean, I'm not going to get into what I, which way I lean on this podcast. But I think those that know me know, and know that I believe a certain way. And I think at the end of the day, we have to lift people up, and we're called in that way to make sure that we do the best for others. And, Chuck, I will tell you one thing I'm a Christian, and I believe that we are called to love, okay? And we are called to, give of ourselves to others and to serve others. And so, all those things being said, we just, like I said, common sense and better judgment can win the day, and you see it. The problem is you don't hear about it. You don't hear enough about it. But if you go to the right places, either on the internet or follow the right, whatever, people on Twitter or whatever, the reality is it's out there. People are doing great stuff every day for each other.
And we've seen that Christian charity here. People have been bringing meal after meal after meal to your hospitals, to the doctor's offices. I mean, just straight up man helping fellow man.
That's right. That's right. And other charities too that aren't Christian based. I mean, you look at what BWP Cares did. It's a law firm, right? I mean, they established a nonprofit and delivered a ton of meals in the churches and community groups, and that's just everybody coming together, right, and doing the right thing for each other. And that's out there right now in our country. We don't hear about it though, and I think you need to help with that. I'm going to call you out, too, okay? You get to call me out. I'm calling you out.
Okay.
You need to help with that.
Amen. I agree with you. What do you say to the community that has helped y'all, that has reached out and, bought a meal for a healthcare worker or just called somebody that's a friend of theirs as a nurse and said, how are you doing?
Yeah. Thank you. So simple and not enough. I mean, we are grateful. Our staff is grateful. They've needed to be lifted up. Those meals and face masks and everything that's been given and donated. The timing has always been really good. And for our staff, it's made a difference. It's made a difference for them, when it's already sometimes hard enough to sit down for 5 minutes to get something to eat. You walk into your break room and somebody's delivered epic. I mean, like who doesn't want to eat, at a fancy restaurant in town, right?
13th Street Barbecue. Pretty good to me.
And it's not just that restaurant; it's every restaurant. I mean, like you said, the barbecue places, and I can't get into naming them all, but when you walk in and there's just a box of food waiting for you from someplace that you would be like, man, that's I'd go there to eat, right? And I mean, I'm like you, I'm partial to the barbecue joints, but all that being said, it's made a difference, and so thank you. So simple, but it's the only way for people to I mean, you have to say it and say it and say it. They say sometimes you have to say something 7 times before people, believe it. We're just so grateful. We really are. And our staff is too. And it's meant the world of difference for them.
And one of the cool things about it was a kill 2 birds with one stone kind of thing, because when these meals were being, particularly at the height of it in, March 2020 to the end of 2020, a lot of these restaurants were really struggling. They've been shut down.
Yeah.
So they were getting to sell product even at a reduced rate, but sell product. They were able to keep staff on, and then they were able to get meals to your people, St. Francis, to the doctor's offices.
I mean, golly, every healthcare provider, doctor's offices, and the Department of Public Health. I mean, they went to everybody. It was really cool.
I want
Fire
to
stations, first responders.
Oh, everybody. I mean, it was beautiful to watch and cover. It really was. It's kind of reinforced your belief in humanity. I want to switch gears real quick, and I'm going to come back to COVID. But you were uniquely positioned as a CEO when COVID hit because you had been through a crisis situation as a manager. A lot of people don't know this, but you were the CEO of the hospital in Blacksburg, Virginia, when the Virginia Tech mass campus shooting happened.
I was, yes.
You've been CEO for how long when that happened?
I've been CEO there for just over a year. Right at a year.
What year did that happen?
2007.
As you think back on that, you were the main hospital.
Yeah, we were the hospital in Blacksburg, which is where Virginia Tech is. Virginia Tech University is located in Blacksburg, Virginia, and we were the hospital in Blacksburg.
A school shooting, a mass shooting, has got to be something. It sends chills down the spine of everybody. But if you're a hospital CEO, a mass casualty event like that, what do you remember about that day, Scott?
What I remember the most about that day is the same thing that I think we have seen throughout this COVID pandemic response, which is staff laying it on the line and doing what they do best and doing it and making it look easy. And I will tell you, I'm not going to tell you there wasn't stress. There was, it was a response to a mass shooting, but our staff just got it done. And they used their training and they used their expertise and they cared for every kid that came through that hospital. And I see the same thing now. I think the big difference between the two is, and healthcare organizations are like this. Like we train, right, for these types of responses. And but the difference with COVID is when you have an event, right, a trauma or a shooting or something like that, you respond. Right, and then you can catch your breath. Well, COVID has been a marathon, not a sprint, right? And so it just hasn't ever gone away. I mean, we have COVID patients in our hospital today, even though the positivity rate across the state went down, I think, to the upper 3%. It's up above 5% now. We still have I can't remember. I don't think we've had zero COVID patients since
March
we got our first one.
March 29th.
I don't think we've had zero.
I remember the day.
At Piedmont Midtown. I mean, at our big hospital, we've not had zero since March of 2020.
Yeah, I remember the first COVID patient that came in. I think the first one went to St. Francis, but, in the COVID delineation, y'all have taken the bulk of the patients. I mean, St. Francis is clearly treated at a large number, but y'all have treated the bulk of it.
Listen, everyone in the community has worked so hard to respond, but we have just by nature of, being the regional kind of tertiary referral center at Piedmont Midtown and having a large organization, we've taken care of a lot of COVID patients. But we've taken care of a lot of COVID patients at Piedmont Northside. Yep. I mean, it's a 100-bed hospital, and at one point in time, a third of their census, a little bit more than a third of their census was COVID patients. So, and St. Francis, same way. Every healthcare organization, the first responders, I mean, can't say enough about the healthcare as a whole, every aspect of it, right? The people that bring, everybody from a first responder perspective, all the way through the spectrum to post-acute. Right, and home health and rehab hospitals, and everyone has
the people that bring the oxygen.
Absolutely, everyone, all the supporting cast, all the people. We have what we call ancillary support services. We have clinical support services. Everyone has responded citywide, community-wide, and I'm a big cheerleader for healthcare workers. I don't hide that. And to me, it doesn't matter what badge you wear. Everybody working inside of healthcare and to support healthcare needs to be patted on the back right now at every hospital, at every organization.
Here we are on the doorstep of 2022. What keeps you awake at night?
A lot of things.
Who's going to be Auburn's quarterback?
Yeah, right. Who's going to be Auburn's quarterback next year? No. In all seriousness, because it's a serious question.
Yeah, it
I mean,
is.
I think the unknowns right now, right, going into 2022, the unknowns with Omicron are and how that's going to affect our staff. I mean, we're very fortunate health system in that, if we need to go out and buy more beds or create a space to treat patients or something, we're fortunate that we can do that. We financially can do those things. But at the end of the day, it's always the people, Chuck. I mean, I've said for years as a hospital leader, it's the people that make all the machines work. That come to work every day inside of the bricks and mortar, that use all the fancy equipment. You can have all those things, but if you don't have people, you can't do anything. And so what keeps me up at night is as each variant comes through, how's it going to affect our people, and what can we do to ease that burden?
You're in a unique position, having as a young CEO dealt with the Virginia Tech shooting.
Mm-hmm.
You're now seeing young people that are in their 20s and 30s dealing with COVID. They're dealing with what we hope is a once-in-a-career situation. They're dealing with it young. Would you rather deal with this at the beginning of your career or in the early stages of your career, or would you rather deal with this at the tail end of your career?
I'd rather deal with it not at all.
Yeah,
right? And I'm not. I know that's me trying to escape the question, right? But,
yeah.
At the end of the day, what I'll tell you is, I don't know. I don't know when I would rather deal with it. I think that if you're young in your career, or early in your career, regardless of your age, we've got folks that have gone back to school to become nurses, and at 40 years of age, 50 years of age. If you're younger, or you're in the beginning parts of your career, I would say you're learning a lot. You're learning a lot right now about a lot of things. Okay.
Do you need a blend then of that youthful energy or that new energy with the experience the gray hair brings?
Absolutely.
Those two married.
We have baby boomers that have aged out and are aging out of the healthcare workforce. We've got, I don't even know what all the generations are, Gen Xers and millennials and what's the current generation coming out? I don't know. You'd have to tell me. Somebody would have to school me on that, but it takes everyone. Right. And everybody has different perspectives. And when you look at the generational differences inside of the healthcare workforce, there's conflict in that. And some of it is good because, everybody's trying to make each other be better. Right. But there's also, within that, too, the concept of, well, I've been here, and you got to pay your dues, and, you're in the beginning part of your career. And I will tell you, I think the generation now is kind of like, I don't believe that stuff.
Oh,
let me get to work and let me do what I need to do. And I try really hard to respect the differences in all of our generations, because to the point of your question, it takes everyone. And we need the nurse that's been out of school for a month as much as we need the nurse that's been working for us for 45 years. We need them all.
We're going to have to wrap this up pretty quick, but, I wanted to talk to you one question, and I'm gonna do something to you I didn't tell you I was going to do to you, so it'll be interesting to see how you handle that. But if you could pull everybody that works for you and this whole 3,000 people into one space, put them in the Civic Center, what's the first thing you tell them, and what do you tell them about next year? If you had to talk to everybody on your staff right now, from the custodian to the charge nurse to the accountant.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I say is thank you, right? Because the last almost 2 years have been just unprecedented. And it's taken everybody, and everybody has come together. And then the next thing I would say is there's a lot we don't know. But we'll get through it. We'll weather it together, because that's what we do. That's what we do every single day. I mean, I've had someone close to me recently have an incident from a trauma perspective, and they called me and were like, hey, can you check, please? I don't think this situation is good. And I said on the phone to that person, I said, this is what we do. right? So yes, I will check and I will make sure everything's, going as well as it can go. But this is what we do, and that's what I would say to our staff. This is what we do, and we're going to do it, and we're going to do it well, and we're going to give everything we got because our patients deserve that. Our patients need that, and then we'll figure the rest out later, right? But you got to take care of people first. You got to take care of people first and do what you do and do it really well.
What do you say to that nurse who's been fighting this battle since March of 2020, and they walk into your office, and this is a hypothetical, but walk in and say, Scott, I can't do it anymore. I'm done. This is too emotionally draining. It's impacting my health. It's impacting my family. What do you say to that person who's dealing with it and has dealt with it, but they're about to the end of the road?
Hang in there. I definitely and would desperately want that person to take some time off, and see if that would help, because there are a lot of people who feel that way, and what I would tell you is I have a deep respect for it, and I know there are a lot of people feeling that way right now, and the best thing we can do is understand that it's real, and that we have to figure out a way to help people through those moments and lift them up and do our best to, help them through the decision-making process. But for someone who's been at it a long time, who's at the, maybe the end of their career, and they're like, I can't do it anymore. I mean, you have to respect everybody's decisions, right? And so we do that and would always do that. But definitely don't ever want to have an employee feel like they have to stay. I have to go to work. I mean, we do have to go to work, but we want people to want to come to work.
You're what, 50 years old?
52.
52. I'm 61. We kind of came up, me more so than you, but the suck it up buttercup management style.
Sure.
You can't do the suck it up buttercup management style anymore, can you?
It doesn't work across the board. It really doesn't. I think that listening is the biggest part of leadership. And we did come up through the pay your dues, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and get moving, and hard work, and all that stuff's true. All that stuff's true. I'm glad that that's the way I came up. But the reality is that with our workforce, listening is the most important part, and listening to hear what they have to say, not listening to respond, but listening just to
really listening.
But listen to what they have to say, not so you can generate a response. I've had I've had conversation with my senior leadership team last week, where we just sat down and had lunch together and just kind of said, where are we at? How are we feeling? And it wasn't anything more than a listening session for everybody to kind of say, here's where I'm at, and here's what I'm struggling with, and this has been hard, and here's how. And we've encouraged all of our leaders system-wide, not just locally, but system-wide, to have those types of conversations with their teams, to listen and hear what they have to say, so that when it's time to respond, and it doesn't need to be in the moment, you'll respond in the right way, which is figuring out a way to help them be able to do their job in an efficient, safe manner, and provide great care. All of our people who work for us want to provide great care.
It comes back to what you were saying earlier. You can have all the equipment and tools, but it comes down to the people.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the bottom line of this
No
whole
doubt.
thing.
No doubt. It's always about the people. And it doesn't, and it's not just healthcare. It's every industry. It's always about the people.
Go into a restaurant right now and see how many of your favorite waiters and waitresses aren't there.
Yeah. I mean, we gotta, that interrelationship between humans right now is a very important thing. And we have to know that plays out in every aspect of our society. And we got to be really careful about that, I think.
Well, we're getting to the end of this thing, and I'm going to do what I've done with every guest, and you're about the 40th. You're getting close to 40 guests.
So I should have listened to your podcast before now. Is that
You
what you're
should
telling
have.
me?
I mean, and I hope your your public relations department, your public affairs folks will share this one so people can hear you, because this has been a really good conversation. You've been very forthright. But I call it turn the tables. I've been asking you questions. I've been asking you questions for 9 years. First time we met was in a coffee shop at the Iron Bank years ago. It's like you wanted to see who this nosy reporter was, and I wanted to see who this green CEO of the largest healthcare system was.
I wasn't green when I came here, by the way.
You look green to me.
You missed that opportunity, buddy. I'm gonna tell you.
You
that
look
right
green
now.
to me. Well, I didn't know you had just come out of what you'd come out of, but yeah, and you weren't green. You're absolutely not. But you know me.
Well, it's been an amazing 9 years here. I can tell you that. We've been through a lot as an organization, and our staff's just a bunch of rock stars.
I mean, you sold the hospital.
Sold it.
Well, you transferred it from Columbus.
No, we didn't sell it, Chuck. We're going to go there again. How many times have I had to explain a merger to you? We merged into Piedmont. Yes, they are the name at the top of the building, but they did not write a check for our hospital. So
People back home are starting to see how this relationship has worked for 9 years.
So I get to ask you a question. That's where we're at.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
where we're at.
Well, let me ask you this, and after 9 years of us talking mostly healthcare, we talk a little bit of Auburn sports too.
Yeah,
but,
a little bit.
we talk about other stuff, but after 9 years of seeing what you've seen in healthcare in this community, tell me what you've learned. What's been the biggest lesson learned for you?
I'm going to flip the question on you after I answer it. I'm going to flip it on you. Because
That's not how this segment works.
the director, Dylan Hanson, sitting over here going, man, finally somebody's fighting back against him. I'm glad. But no, I think healthcare has evolved. 9 years ago, you had two hospitals that were both, you had St. Francis and Columbus Regional. They both were controlled by local boards. They were essentially locally owned.
Sure.
Today, neither one of them are. They're controlled. Piedmont and then St. Francis is controlled by Life Point,
Right.
and then which is a for-profit. Y'all stayed in the nonprofit
We
lane.
did. Yeah.
Lane. St. Francis did not, although St. Francis has a care arrangement with Emory, and that also has brought that expertise. I think we were siloed here 9 years ago because we were locally owned, and I'm sure there are people that were on those boards that were involved in the decisions, and y'all's was a very deliberate path that Warren Still guided for many months.
It was a 3-year journey.
Yeah, and I mean and y'all were incredibly open about it. St. Francis's happened with some financial difficulties, and it was a much quicker, much more whiplash deal. But that said, with both of them, I think we're fortunate. I think we've got quality health care here. I think we still do. I mean, I was in your ER for 6.5 hours on Thursday night, and I got to see a lot of what your guys do. I have friends that work for you, friends that work for St. Francis. I hear people talk about what they're dealing with. I think one of the differences now, I think we have an incredibly stressed workforce that are caring for us right now. I think
That's fair.
everybody at both hospitals, even some of the doctors' offices now, they're tired. They want to see this. We're a society that is not used to long hauls. I mean, our grandparents went to Europe and fought a war. We have people here who have trouble going to get a shot. I mean, and I know that's probably the closest you'll hear me say political, but I mean, we're not asking people to get on a boat and get off on the shores of Normandy. We're asking people to get a shot, and it clearly works. And I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you soft pedaled it, but that's okay.
I usually say that to you, man.
No, I would tell you what I would say, Chuck. Looking back over the last 9 years and what's happened to healthcare in Columbus, this is just this is Scott's opinion of what I've learned being here for 9 years is resilient. Look at the workforces of these organizations and the tremendous amount of change they've had to go through. and they're all still standing, and they're still fighting through a pandemic and doing it the right way, and trying their best to take care of people every single day. And it's just that resiliency, even over the long haul, right?
Yep.
It's still there. It's still there, and that's what healthcare workers do. They're called to it. They're resilient. They wake up every day, and they go to work, and they fight the fight. And we as a community should be really glad and grateful for that.
Well, and the workers that fight have to have support on the back end, and that's where administrators like you and Melody Trimble at St. Francis, and that where people come in that they've got to have support. They've got to know. I mean, even in the business I'm in, if you don't have the support of your leaders, you're not going to do very well. It's not going to be a good place to be.
Well, leaders serve those in the organization. that is the reality of it, and so you have to do it. You have to take care of your folks, and that's you have to do what you do first, which is take care of patients. But there's a real close second there, and it's your people, because they're the ones that are there at the bedside doing it, or either if they're not at the bedside, they're there supporting it somehow or another.
Well, I just want to close this podcast. I want to thank you for being here, but I want to thank everybody that works in healthcare in our community across the country, but particularly here in Columbus, the people that work at Piedmont Columbus Regional, St. Francis Emory Healthcare, people that work in these doctors' offices. They really are heroes. At the end of the day, they're heroes. And, the people that are, I can't imagine what the people that have been doing bedside care for the last 20 months have been going through. And, I hope and pray that 2022 brings a little relief, a lot of relief.
Yeah, I do too. I echo those comments, Chuck. I echo everything you just said. Thank you to everybody who's out there just trying to do the right thing and working really hard and just taking care of folks. It matters.
It matters. It definitely matters. Our guest has been Scott Hill. Scott is the CEO of Piedmont Columbus Regional and the CEO of the 16 Hospital Piedmont Healthcare System.
No, I'm not that CEO of that.
COO. Oh, man, I just promoted you, Scott. That was the best hour you've had in a long time. This is the time I have to tell you. See, I get so nervous on ending the show. I can do everything, but I screw up the ending every time.
I like the pretty good ending, actually.
No. You can listen to the Chuck Williams Show Tuesday nights from 7 to 8 on WRBL.com. You can also get it where you get your regular podcast on iHeart, Spotify, and what's the other one? Apple. Yeah, Apple. What's that?
It's only the largest technology company in the world, Chuck.
And then you can follow me on social media. You don't strike me as a social media kind of guy, but I'm on Twitter at Chuck Williams. I'm on Facebook, Chuck Williams WRBL, and I'm also on Instagram, Chuck Williams 0999. You've been listening to another episode of the Chuck Williams Show. We've got one more, hopefully, before the end. No, is this it? No, we got one more before the end of the year. I think we got one more.
Are you taking next week off?
I'm going to try to get a guest. You and I got to talk about that.
All right.
Dylan. But you've been listening to the Chuck Williams Show, and we will be back here next week. Next year, we're coming back. I just don't know when. We'll figure it all out later. Thanks for listening.